What is up, everybody? This is the Wild Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Heskett, and we got episode 120 today. So, exciting announcement before we get into the thing. We got guests lined up. So, starting next week, we're going to have guests back on the podcast. I just need to get better now that things are getting a little bit less crazy about being consistent with guests. So, we are bringing them back while the craziness is low and probably lining up a whole bunch. So that is starting next week and super exciting. So new one coming out next week, not related to fitness or nutrition, but related to some of the stuff you all enjoy doing. So I'm going to be branching out a little bit more in 2024 and not just doing coaches, but doing, talking to people of all the interest I have, which, I think will be just fun to bring on the podcast and take in the direction more of what I want to do with the podcast rather than what the direction it was kind of going before with guests. So just getting interesting people on the podcast. Anyways, today we're going to talk about 2024 planning. Get a little like sneak peek because we're not just going to talk about fitness and health, even though that's a big component to it. We're going to talk about how to incorporate all of your plans into 2024. So when we look at something I like to call like the circle of wellness, I forget the actual term for it, but it's like something like circle of wellness. Let's circle of wellness. I should probably not have my notebook over my keys. Anyways, where's the images? I just go there. There's no images here. That's weird, Google. By the way, so random before we get into the podcast, I don't know if anyone else uses Google Chrome, but all of a sudden last week, all my extensions and everything that made life very convenient just disappeared on me. It was like a new update and anyways, I found images. So anyways, the circle of wellness is all the dimensions of wellness that are important to maintaining good physical, emotional, and mental health. All important things. So that's part of it. It's one, we have our occupational health. Like, how well are you doing in your career? Are you happy with your career? Intellectual, like, are you learning? Are you growing as a person? Environmental, that doesn't necessarily mean the environment, but the environment you are living in. Like, is everything healthy, financial, social, physical, spiritual, and then we're back to emotional. And there's a few different variations of this, but in general, we want to make sure that all these areas are being taken care of in some capacity. And usually we're going to be really good in some areas and not so good in others. I always think of like there's in some of the RPG games, you get like a certain class and it's like really good with like strength, but defense sucks. So you get this like graph, and that's kind of like for us in the real world, kind of how this graph goes. Like, okay, we're really good with all these things except my spiritual and my environmental suck, or my social sucks, or I'm really good with my how do I want to phrase it? My physical health at home and everything, but I literally hate my job. So there's all these areas like, what can we do to try to improve? And you can't always do everything. Like if you're in a career where it's like, I really can't move, at least this year, then it's like, okay, well, we're going to do what we can with the other areas and we're going to try to improve those areas. So what that means for you is trying to plan out 2024. So as I'm talking about this, we are gearing up for gardening season. For some of you, it's turkey and trout season. I suck as a trout fisherman. I do go out occasionally. We don't have any turkeys here in Southeast PA, or, well, we do technically, but there's few and far between and not much area to go and do it. And I don't have any equipment other than the shotgun and the camo for turkey hunting. So I would rather spend that time hunting. So with that being said, I need to turn my phone off there. I'm gearing up for gardening season, which means that hobby is going to take over my life very, very soon in March. In March, when we start all the seeds, and that's happening. And then, April and May, we go into spring. And then next thing you know, it's summer. And then practicing archery. Well, I'll be practicing archery soon here, but practicing for hunting season. Then we go into hunting season, and then we're back. All of a sudden, it's 2025. So same thing applies for you. Like, look at your hobbies. Look at the things you do. Vacations. Are you into hunting, gardening, etc.? Where does your physical health take priority? Where do you need to take a step back? And I always get some smart ass person like, well, I guess I'm just going to take a step back the whole time. Like, no. At some point, we have to figure out, like, okay, we need to make it work. There's been the shift in the online health community. I think for at least the part I'm in, I'm seeing as a little bit better of allowing the 80-20, not demonizing foods and everything. But at the same time, it's gone, for lack of a better term, a little soft in that it's like, well, if it's not a good time, we can always do later. And that, I think, is good for a lot of people to hear, but not everyone. And so some people need to be, you can't keep kicking the can down the road. You got to do something now. So you don't have to go all in, but we need to like start doing something now. Anything, some resistance training, just watching what you're eating and not like getting seconds, something like that. Like, not crazy, but you're doing something. So that's where you're like, well, everything is slammed. Like, you look at, if you're one of those, and I've worked with people like this where job's crazy, you have your hunting or your garden or whatever, you have travel for it, and everything is like, okay, you're going to have to prioritize. It's going to take a little bit more effort for you to do these things. So you're going to have to do that because it's important. You can't, just because every month literally has something, you're like, it's not a good time except for between February and March, like 2 months out of the year. That's a good time. Like, you can't build your health within that time frame. But for everyone else, so I've said it multiple times on this podcast, I always plan on maintenance season being hunting season. I find hunting very rewarding. Obviously, I obsess over it, but it's also very mentally draining. And it's hard for me to get more than 4 days a week in of resistance training. So I usually go to 3 days a week of weight training during that time. And that might change in the future. But as of right now, with the girls and their schedules, work schedule, everything like that, if it comes down to getting out and getting to the gym, or it's a really good day to go out hunting, I'm going out hunting during that time of year. So for me, how I plan is I go hunting season. That's the one that's, in my opinion, the least flexible, also the most important, because that's going to be the majority of our meat for the year. So it's the least flexible. Gardening has a little bit more flexibility into it. And not as long of like I can go out for an hour a couple times a week and get things done, versus hunting, you might be sitting for, on the low end, 2 hours, but probably 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. So I can get a workout in and go and do the garden. I can do those things. So I work backwards from that. And same thing, you should try to figure out where your busy season is. Is it right now? Is it summer when you're vacationing? I've coached people where they vacation almost, especially teachers. It seems a lot of teachers kind of are like this in summer that I've worked with, not saying all of them, but it's like they have their husbands or their spouse that is off on a Friday. Like, they're going to do a 4-day work week during the summer, and they like leave Thursday night to go to the beach, come back, and then it's Thursday. So it's like, well, it's not a good time to try to do 6 days a week of weight training. Maybe it's a good time to focus on other things. Maybe that's your maintenance. It's not a good time to try to lose fat because you're going down there. You party down there. Not a good time. Spring, fall, those are better times for you. So find where your busy season is. Plan around that. I worked with a client last year where her craziest time of the year is the summer, And it's because when they're off work, she goes out with her friends and they like to drink and party and have a good time and barbecue and do all these things that aren't very good for fat loss. And so it took a lot for us to work through fat loss. But as she graduated coaching, we came up with the plan of not doing fat loss over summer. We're going to do other things. We are going to train for maintenance or try to build muscle during summer when you're going to automatically have higher calories. And then we're also going to plan when you can do fat loss, like after summer or before summer, like you just plan around that. So it just makes your schedule work a little bit better for you. And even if you have like extra weight to lose, it gives you like, okay, we're going to take time off now. I'm going to try not to gain too much weight because on the back end of this, like after summer's over or after fall's over, I don't want it to be dieting for too long. So it comes down to what your schedule's like and figuring that out so you can effectively plan. And the plan's the first part. Then you actually have to execute the plan. Just keep in mind, don't spend forever trying to plan out every single day for the entire year or even week by week. It's kind of like just look at the quarter or the month. The way I like to do is the quarters almost, or 3-month segments. So you have first quarter, second quarter, third, fourth. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but if you're not, first quarter's January through March, then second quarter's April through June, July, August, September, October, November, December is fourth quarter. I'm sure you're familiar with that. You can break it down like that. It doesn't follow exactly. So for hunting, that's going to be October, November, kind of December. So it's September through early December and holidays. So for me, fourth quarter is kind of a wash. That's maintenance because we have holidays, we have hunting for me. As soon as hunting season's over, we're going right into Christmas because usually it's the second week of December that ends. Then it's like my birthday the next week. And then it's Christmas the next week. And then it's New Year's the week after. Literally like my birthday's the 18th. So it's like every 7 days is a holiday in December, which drives my wife insane. But she decided to say yes when I put a ring on it. So that's her. She has to deal with it now. But that's why I plan for that. Not necessarily for the reason why you have to do that. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but I am saying that maybe you should take a look and try to figure that out. Because a lot of people will say summer's not a good time because I have the kids home, blah, blah, blah. It's hard to do. Like, understandable. Is the fall actually going to be better? Because a lot of people will be like, kids are back in school, so I will have so much more free time. Kids go back to school in September. And then comes October. Do you do a lot of things in October? Like before hunting, October was like a big time for my wife and I before we had kids, before hunting. Like we're doing stuff every weekend. Not a great time for fat loss. Then comes November. Guess what? It's at the end of November. Thanksgiving. Are you doing anything before? Like do you have Friendsgiving? Do you have work parties, work holiday parties? Like how does November look? So you might get 2.5 months at best, which is not a ton of time when it comes to fat loss. Like, unless you have like only 5 pounds to lose, but if you have more than that, 10, 15, 20 pounds plus, that's not enough time. So why are we saying that? Why am I telling you this at end of February? Because right now might be the best time for you. Right now might be, you're like, there's nothing going on. Maybe you have one vacation or one holiday or one birthday here or there, maybe multiple birthdays. But in general, I've found that the winter, like the first 6 months of the year, generally aren't that crazy. Maybe the first 5 months for most people is the easiest time, not necessarily the best, but the easiest time to be consistent with your diet and exercise. It is January through May, and then we get into like, it's Labor Day. Is it Labor Day or I always get Labor Day and Memorial Day mixed up. We get into that holiday, which is the unofficial kickstart of summer. Is that June or May? It's one of those holidays that I always forget every single year. But we get into that, and probably a bunch of you already have that planned. Like, okay, great. Are you doing, if you want to get into quote unquote beach body season, or like you're trying to get your beach body, are you doing anything right now to do that? If not, we're why not? We are in crunch time. This is not, it's not a month out. Now is crunch time if you're trying to get into quote unquote beach body for that by that time. But after that, we kind of get into like the weather's super hot. If you have kids, they're home from school, or you're driving them all over for summer camps and everything else. You have vacations. Generally, a lot of people take summer vacations. We do as well. So it becomes harder. It's easier to be more physically active, but it's harder to be consistent with your nutrition, because what I found for a lot of people is your diet might be a little bit better, even though there's some sneaky calories in terms of fats that just kind of sneak their way into some quote unquote healthy looking meals. But you also want like, I could go for a cool glass of wine or ice cold beer or seltzer. Like we've run into those issues. And that's what I found over the year. People are like, oh, my diet's so much better in the summer. Well, why didn't you lose weight? Well, it's because of beer. Like, well, that's a problem. So we have, and that's why if nothing's going on now, now's the best time. Like it's boring. There's nothing to do. Okay, why don't we focus on that stuff? Why don't we focus? Because summer's less busy. So again, for me, gardening right now, we might have some weekends that are going to be chores and stuff for the spring. But other than that, it's not a crazy time. Summer, again, for us, we have little kids. It's not super crazy for us. However, I am practicing archery very consistently during the summer versus off and on, and the garden is in full swing. So we are spending a good amount of time doing that and then roll right into the fall. So it's just about planning it out. And you need to take a look at your stuff and also plan that out or figure out what you need to do. Do you need to hire a consultant? Do you need to hire a coach? Do you need to get a trainer? Do you need to do something to take the mental load off of you so you don't have to think about it? So the guest for next week is someone in the gardening world who's built this awesome product, which is basically like a one-stop shop. And I'm very excited to try some of his stuff out this year. It takes, like for me last year, I would spend just hours like trying to figure out how to do everything. His product's a little bit more expensive than what you're going to get at Lowe's, but it's a one-stop shop. I don't have to think about it. I can take all that stuff, let him handle. He spent past 5 years figuring this product out. I can just let him do that. I just put plants in, water them, and then it does its magic. So for me, that's something where, hey, that's going to free up mental headspace, free up some time for me where I can then spend that time either with family, on my workouts, on my nutrition, practicing for hunting. So it frees up time. And same thing applies for you. Is there anything that you need to you need to hand off to someone else to handle for you? And that's fine. Or is it like, maybe it's home chores and things you have to do around the house, vacuuming. Maybe this is the year you buy a iRobot to take care of vacuuming. You let that run. With kids, so we actually have them and they're fantastic. I will say that, except with the kids. With the kids, it's been tough with all the toys and stuff out. We haven't been able to run it as much, but I'm looking forward to eventually getting back to running it on the regular in our living room, because it did just like keep it fairly clean all the time. It's not going to say do the same job as you, but it's going to be close. And what I learned from one of my business mentors is when you hire someone like an employee, a contractor, or someone, you want them to do the job 80% as well as you can. And I think And the reason for it is you're going to take that time and use it for things that are going to better you. Maybe this is going to be spending time with your family that you've been stressing that you don't spend time with. Maybe it is going and getting your workouts in finally, or being able to track or cook meals. So if that iRobot thing, the Roomba, does vacuuming 80% as well as you do, maybe now you only have to vacuum, say, once a month versus every week or every couple of days. Maybe if it's every couple of days you're vacuuming, maybe now it's to once a week you actually vacuum. Well, that just cut out, even if it's 20 minutes a time, but it might be a little bit longer, that cut out, freed up a whole bunch of time for you, other than like you just have to like empty the basket. That gives you more options. I'm not saying that's what you have to do. I'm giving you an idea of, okay, of all these things, where are my priorities? What do I need the most help with? And obviously I'm a coach, so I'm going to toot my own horn. So is it health and nutrition? Instead of spending hours upon hours, let me hire an expert. So you sign up for coaching. Or again, maybe it is, I really want to do a garden. I don't have the time to really commit to it. Maybe you hire a garden consultant to really do things right the first time. Or maybe you just like, okay, like I know this person has the best soil, so I know my plants are going to do well. It's minimal effort. I just put them in the ground. They grow. I get what I want. I don't have to like think soil test and do all this stuff to make sure everything's optimized and I'm not going to get destroyed with pest and disease. Or maybe it's hunting. Maybe it's going instead of trying to figure out your bow setup. Maybe it is going to someone who's an archery coach and getting your form dialed in and making sure they kind of like make sure everything's set up correctly for you so that you're good to go as soon as hunting season opens up, rather than you like needing to tinker with it. And the reason I'm saying that is this is picking one of those. If you're like, oh, well, I would never give up the bow thing. You don't give that up. You give up the thing that you're like, it's not that important. Like, it's nice, but I literally, I don't have the capacity to handle it. I need to do these other things. So I'm going to hand that off to someone else, let them handle it. This gives me more time to really focus. So instead of your attention being split between figuring out your workouts and figuring out the garden and figuring out your bow setup, now you can just figure out your bow setup, or figure out your workouts and your bow setup. Or maybe it's figure out your garden and your bow set. So magically you get a lot of time back to then refocus. Or maybe it is, I'm going to hand off the workout thing, to have someone else do my workout, write my workouts for you, so I can focus on the garden, focus on my bow, and now focus on building my cooking skills by really starting to meal prep and do. So you can always add in something that's not even on the list. Like, I suck at cooking. Okay, no problem. It's a skill. We can get better. Do you have time to cook? Yes, no, maybe. So again, it is figuring out, what do you need? What is the best thing for you? What can you hand off? And planning around that, or planning around seasons, as I've said. If you're like, I really can't hand off anything, which I get. Hiring people to help you out can be very, very expensive. So is it, okay, well, right now you're not tinkering with your bow because you're figuring out the garden, figuring out everything else. Maybe you're shooting, but you're not really tinkering. You're just working on form. And it's just like, get a few arrows in, you're done. And then you're really focused on the other areas. Or maybe is, I don't have time to really plan out the garden for this. I'm just kind of going to do the same thing that we did last year. And then I can focus on the other areas. You can pick the quarters, the seasons, however you want to do it, 3-month block, 2-month blocks, to focus on different skills and everything. But you do need to plan this out. And again, that's going back to looking at when your busiest time of year is and working backwards from that time of year. Because it's okay not to focus on all the things, or not to focus on the thing you might deem needed most. On Alex's podcast, when I was editing Chase Smith's, I got to listen to it. So I was editing her podcast for a while. I got to listen to Chase has been on this podcast, but he was on her podcast, and I would recommend you go and check it out. So Chase was explaining how he struggled because even though he still needs to lose weight, he needed to take time away from fat loss and work on other things, which he did. He competed in powerlifting. He did a couple other. He needed to take a mental break, a mental and physical break from chasing fat loss. And that's what he did. And a lot of people would say, well, he still has X amount of weight to lose. In fact, he said that on podcasts. He still had some weight to lose. But it's okay to be like, back off. We're not going to go crazy. We're going to take some time, focus on something else, give yourself a mental break, because you can always kick things back up. It's not like, okay, this is your one chance to lose body fat. Like, no, you can lose some body fat now, take a break, try not to gain too much weight, and then kick things back up. The biggest issue we have here in America right now, and probably most of the Western world dealing with obesity crisis, is we don't have a fat loss problem. Most people can do some sort of fat diet or something and get pounds off. You have probably done some sort of fat diet and lost the weight. The problem we have is a weight regain problem. And the problem with that, or the issue, we regain the weight and then some because we don't do things in a sustainable way that works for our lifestyle and our schedule. We cut out foods we love to lose weight quickly, and then we add those foods back in that we've been missing and we're craving, and then we feel guilty after eating them and gaining weight, so we start this negative relationship with food. We don't want to avoid that. We want to avoid that. Check myself there. So instead of trying to do all the things, sometimes if you can't give it great effort, it's okay to be like, I'm starting this next month. This month, I can just focus on getting water, and I can focus on getting protein, and I can do these other things to work towards my goal. But next month, like, it's ramping things up. Think of it like a dial on a knob, like from level 1 to level 10. We never go off. When we're talking about health and everything, we never go 0. We don't turn it off. We just dial it from a 1 to a 10, with 1 being like, I'm just like, all I can do is like get water in and then eat protein at each meal. And then 10 would be like, we're getting perfect workouts in, macros are perfect, sleep's perfect, we've cut out alcohol, we're watching our caffeine intake, we're taking all this, like all the things that you're probably like, I have to do all of this stuff. Like, it's okay to hang out at like a 7. I can probably tell you, like, I hang out like in my most dialed recently, I'm probably an 8. 10's like taking over your life. Like, you go to 10 if you have a competition coming up, like a bodybuilding competition, a half marathon, something like that. You're probably going to hang out 8, 9. Maybe you go to 10, but it's okay to be like, hey, I'm doing things great. I'm seeing results. So I'm going to continue to do things until I no longer see results. And then I might need to dial things up. I might need to keep things about the same, just adjust things. So always think of things as a dial, like, okay, I can't do a 10 right now. I can't even do an 8, but I can do a 3. I can make sure I don't get up for seconds at dinner. That's going to cut out a ton of calories. I'm going to try not to snack after 9 p.m. if you go to bed at like, say, 10. Like, I'm going to try not to snack there. Or I'm going to try not to snack on cheese and crackers. I'm going to try to have lower calorie snack options. I'm going to try not to snack on things that are easy for me to overconsume, like peanut butter. I'm going to snack on fruit, and I'm going to snack on, maybe it's cottage cheese or Greek yogurt, things like that. That's okay. We're doing a 3. We're still working towards things. So then when you dial up, you're ready to go up to an 8. You're going from a 3 to an 8 instead of a 1 to an 8. Or even if you're like, you're actually at 0, which I told you, already said, don't do that. 0 to 8. Like, that's a big jump versus going from a 3 to an 8. Or even if you're sitting at like a 5, like I'm getting some workouts in like 2-3 days a week, but I prefer to get more. And then I'm watching my diet, but I could be more consistent. I'm getting good sleep, but I could be better. Like we're like a 5. Going from a 5 to 8 is a fairly small jump. It's like, okay, I'm no longer staying up late. I'm getting to bed on time. I'm now weighing out my food and tracking it a little bit, or at least just weighing it out so I know what I'm eating. And I'm getting all my workouts in. Like, that's a small jump rather than go from like, oh, doing nothing to trying to do all the things. Hopefully this wasn't a whole bunch of word salad for you guys. I hopefully gave you some lessons in here about planning things out. But as always, check out down below for discounts for supplements if you need supplements right now. Also, make sure to follow me on social media and follow the new page, Not Perfect Kitchen, which is going to be the new project for 2024 coming out that me and my buddy Nick Averona are doing. And then, as always, please take a moment, give the show a rating, rate it 5 stars, please. I know a bunch of you are listening, but you haven't rated it because I can go in and see how many people have rated it. So please just take 2 seconds, give it a rating with whatever you feel like the show deserves, as that helps the show get pushed out so more people can find it. The more ratings we get, the more the show gets pushed out. So please, it takes 2 seconds of your time. Go out, rate it. 5 star, 4 star, 3. Please don't give a 1 or a 2. But if that's what you feel is proper for the show, do that. I think on Apple you can actually write something. Spotify, I'm not sure. But anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a good rest of your week.